Hey everyone, welcome to the Stars Lads review of episode 4 of Andor, titled Aldhani. Alright, so now I'll pass it over to Liam for his review of the episode.
Hello there, everybody, and thank you for watching our review of Andor Episode 4. Here's my quick thoughts again this week before I return in full next week. I enjoyed this episode quite a bit. Again, I think this episode starts to spring us into the action a bit more, continuing what we started from Episode 3. I enjoyed getting more look at Luthen's role in Coruscant, what he does. We all kind of assumed he was a senator or something. He is the owner of an art gallery, or an antiquities gallery. So that's cool. It's an interesting angle. I want to see what the inner workings of the circle is between him and Mothma, presumably Bail Organa and everybody else. It would be interesting to see who the person Mothma wants to bring in is. I enjoyed that part. I'm really looking forward to the Senate stuff here. I think all of the political side of this show is going to be the most interesting and intriguing. Cassian's role is a bit slower. It's more of a build up to what will probably be an action-packed, exciting episode next week. So I'm looking forward to that. But his role is definitely the thing that I found the least interesting, I guess, this week when compared to Luthen and Mothma. And also the new character, the new ISB officer. I'm looking forward to seeing the inner workings of the ISB. Be cool to see an Admiral Yoloran appearance at some point. But yeah, I think that will be an interesting side to this. It'll be interesting to see how the guy from the security corporation who got fired, or didn't get fired, but he's now reassigned, and now he's back on Coruscant with his parents. That's really the only scene we get of him with his mom, and I think his ambition is going to be something interesting to explore throughout the show. Overall, I think the show, the 12 episodes seem justified because of the amount of characters. We keep introducing more and more things, which, right now feels fine. It'll be interesting to see how it feels towards episode 10, 11 as we get to close towards the season, especially because season 2 will take such a large jump in terms of it'll progress faster every year. But I think because the show has been written for 24 episodes, it's not a will they, won't they get a season 2. I think this show will be the most cohesive probably out of all of them, and it doesn't seem to have been shrunk down, for the 6-episode format like some of the other shows. Something like Obi-Wan at times felt like it had not enough time to explore some of its themes and characters. This show seems like it will have the runtime to do that, and I appreciate all that. One last little Easter egg that I caught, I'm sure most of you caught, but pretty exciting as a fan of early Republic, or the early Tales of the Jedi era, pre-Tales of the Jedi, Dawn of the Jedi era, and then the KOTOR era where they're so important. The Rakatans are mentioned in this episode, which I think is really cool. So yeah, continuing a solid start for Andor. Looking forward to next week, where it'll probably be a pretty action-packed episode, because I'm sure that heist will not go as planned. So stay tuned for the rest of our review for Sanak's thoughts, and check out our predictions speculations Friday. I'll be back next week. Thanks, guys.
Well, you heard what Liam had to say for this episode. Looks like we really both enjoyed what was going on here. A lot of cool things to really chew on. Now, Aldhani is the setting for where Cassian's story takes place in this episode, and presumably for the next 1 or 2 episodes. But in truth, it could honestly be more appropriately titled Coruscant, because most of our action happens there, and a lot of variety in what happens on Coruscant especially. So if you really want to get a feel for what Coruscant is in the Imperial era from the perspectives that we already developed in the first 3 episodes of Andor, and the new big storylines that have started off in this episode, this is a planet to be at. But let's start off with Aldhani itself. Again, like I said, it is Andor storyline is going to take place there, but we do get some good build-up. We get a little bit more of Luthen. We get some interesting tidbits about him. He's carrying a kyber crystal that he kind of gives as down payment to Andor, who he's kind of renting out as a sort of mercenary. He doesn't seem like he truly believes that Andor is just a guy for hire. He knows that he's kind of put him in this position where he can't do anything but take up any offer that he offers to him, and Andor knows it at the same time. But it's interesting to see how Luthen really knows so much about him. The only thing he's asking is like what's inside of Andor. I thought that was, again, I've really enjoyed the show so far, but the writing is just popping off the screen so far, and the acting is stupendous to carry all that stuff that's happening there. But a lot of the internal stuff that Luthen doesn't really know about Cassian yet, he just tries to probe at right away. And there's some interesting tidbits. We know that Cassian was 16 and he was a Mimban, which is surprising because that means that it happened maybe a couple years before or after Han Solo. And he tries to sell this story of like how he was one of the 50 people who left surviving. But Luthen's like, nope, I know you were a cook and you ran. That's why you're alive. So it's really interesting to see just how much of Cassian is not exactly a fighter. Like he gets in scraps, he gets in trouble, but fighting for a bigger cause isn't really part of his agenda. And I really like just how quickly they dug into that. We got to see after Luthen kind of forces Cassian onto this sort of rebel group that he's working with, kind of see that transformation into that antique stealer that we saw in the trailer. I mean, it's still Skarsgård is an amazing actor, but just the shot of him after he wears his wig and everything, and he kind of just plays the part for like 2 seconds, and he's just charming and alive, and then immediately turns it off. That was so good, and then he carries that on with his other scenes in the rest of the episode. But that stuff really enamored me. Just seeing how much duplicity, deception is really the undercurrent of this whole series, but especially this episode. As far as what goes on Aldhani, I would say it's interesting. It really does feel like the first of 3 parts or first of 2 parts. We know that there's a mission. Luthen tells Cassian it's for a payroll, the quarterly payroll of an entire Imperial sector, but it's actually getting into a garrison and escaping on a freighter because he's a good pilot. He can do what he needs to do. Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly enticing. It's a lot of setup there. We get characters like there's a guy from The Bear from FX. I don't know what his name is, but I love him. He's probably the best actor from that show, honestly. We get to see this character named Vel, who's the point of contact, and she has her little crew. She has someone who's working at the garrison, who's like their 6th member, and with Cassian, they become 7. Cassian's going by the name of Clem, I believe. He's not really letting anyone know his intentions. Luthen tells him not to tell his name either, which is pretty interesting to me. I guess it is for security purposes. But essentially, it's just all right. Here's a setup. We don't really trust you. We don't like how you've been forced onto us. What are you gonna do for us? All right, learn all this stuff because we're gonna do something totally crazy, and that's the only way we're gonna be able to escape with this payroll. We don't really see much action with this group. Some of them like them. There's this kind of kid who's a little bit more artistic. He talks about like the crystalline structures that happen in the air during every 3 years that this festival that these Aldanians used to go to. It's like a very spiritual gathering, but obviously the Empire took over their place and all that. But it still happens. It's a natural occurrence. And so this is their perfect cover for coming in and out without them even realizing what happened. I like his character. I like how everyone's a little antsy around him. I love how Cassian kind of feels like he knows that he has to succeed. And yeah, he could run. He tries to at one point. The Fondor, like built-in robot, which is very cool to see. Um, Kind of was like, oh, do you need any help? Just like being like, come on, buddy. Like, I'm better than that. I'm a whole ship. I know what you're about to do, which I mean, only adds to Luthen being very careful about everything he's doing. Yeah, not too much there. I'm liking what they've done so far. I'm liking that Cassian, even though he doesn't believe in any of this stuff truly yet, he's kind of being forced into a situation where he has to be the executor of this whole plan for those people who have a cause that they believe in. And that young kid also believes in Andor, which is interesting because he's not really there yet. He's not really where he needs to be this assassin with no remorse for that rebellion for this cause. But I like where we're going. It's probably the least interesting part, but I think it's really well acted, and I'm I actually enjoyed just kind of using like Thailand as an environment, nothing too crazy. We get a little bit about the people and a little bit about their structures of living, what the empire took over. And it's not like visually stunning or anything, but it's beautiful, it's serene, and it's a beginning. And I'm liking it. It does feel like this episode will definitely work as like another 3 episode or 2 episode drop. But if we're gonna have to go weekly, I'm fine with being patient because everything that happens on Coruscant, yeah, that stuff is awesome. We see Cyril meet his mom. We see a little bit of the humor in Andor episode 1 and 3 with like the background character of the guy like running around with like a kooky face on. And I'm liking that we're getting a little bit tidbits of humor in this show. We got to see him arrive on Coruscant, which I thought was surprising. Some kid who's working on this backwater planet, but he's actually not from the area. He's from the center of the galaxy. I thought that was a pretty interesting angle to put on him. Maybe this was part of his ambitions in some way that forced him to go on this strange path of his. And we get to see his mom open the door, slap him, give him a hug, and then shoo off their neighbor. I love that, but not much else there. But you can see how he feels, at least through the visuals, that he's enclosed. He doesn't really feel big or large as he wants to, and he's already insecure and all that, as we've seen in the first 3 episodes. But Coruscant is a different beast, so I can see why maybe he escaped from that pressure of sorts. He wants to be able to live up to that, but he's not capable yet. Yeah, I mean, the big thing for what we've seen revealed in the trailers with Coruscant was the Mon Mothma stuff. And I really enjoyed all that. We get to see Luthen play his character. We get to see this lady who's like also helping him with his antique store. Kind of get this Chandrilan driver who's been assigned to Mon Mothma, a new one too, to showcase the Empire, kind of spying on her, controlling her actions. But I like seeing them kind of both play this act. They're like, "Oh yes, I'm getting a present for my husband. Oh, this is amazing, Utapan." Like wartime stuff. Like, oh, this is all very cool. Like, yeah, also interesting, also wonderful. I don't know if the antique stuff is just purely a cover because when he gives Cassian like this Kyber crystal as like a down payment, he does mention that Rakuten like destruction, takeover, war, or whatever. I don't exactly remember what word he used, but it was a nice little lore dump there because it's like, oh, maybe the Rakatan Infinite Empire is slowly being recanonized in some way, which awesome. I'd love that to be expanded. I'd love to be a little bit of a KOTOR connection. Maybe that's what the people are rumored as the KOTOR connection, as small as it is. But in this antique store, we also see like the Star Killer mask. We get to see some cool things that could definitely be mined on a second glance. So even if it is a cover, maybe it truly was part of like what his life was before this fight. Really became like a duplicitous affair. But again, I'm really enjoying the stuff with the the cover that they're putting on Mon Mothma and him easily slide into like cheery, happy to like, all right, can you pull through? Can you give me the money? Like yada yada yada. It's all cool. This inner circle character doesn't seem to be Saw Gerrera. I think there was some speculation on that. I'm very curious to who it could be because these people that Vel and her crew know about Saw Gerrera, mention him by name, but they don't necessarily seem like they'd be totally disconnected from Mon Mothma. Like Mon Mothma, I feel like would know about Saw Gerrera being as connected as she is to this whole affair and stuff. But yeah, it was really interesting. And then we got to see her civilian life with her husband Perrin, who she supposedly got this gift from Luthen's store for her. I mean, the architecture of her place is wonderful. I love the design of her clothing and her husband's. Kind of Eastern influence with the monk-like hair, but also very flowy, free-flowing, but also robed off. That gives me some Tatooine vibes almost, Jedi robe vibes almost. But yeah, her domestic life isn't great. And Sly Moore and the Vizier and a couple other players that apparently are actively working against everything she puts her hands on are invited to this dinner with one of his old regiment mates that was scheduled on the calendar. It seems like this marriage was already struggling over these 10, 15 years. But this guy just, He just kind of feels not sleazy, but just like, like why are we following this guy? Okay, sure. Um, doesn't seem like she cares much about him. He doesn't really. I don't know. He cares about his wife, or maybe he once did, but now he's gone so apathetic that he just like kind of mocks her, which is an interesting place to start off with this relationship. There's nothing redeeming about it almost immediately. Um, Seems like he's a lot more pro Imperial and unaware of what she's actually doing behind the scenes. If he is, he's playing it really well. But yeah, I don't know. That's the most interesting stuff with her. But it's nice to see a little bit of her private life, considering we see so much of Padme's as like the basis for the prequels. So what did other senators do in their downtime? We're getting a little bit tidbit here. I enjoyed it. But I think the real meaty stuff of this episode is really the Imperial Security Bureau stuff, where we get Dedra Meero, who's a lieutenant in the ISB, and she's got this major who's in charge of everyone. They're in the round table, just kind of telling stuff going around in the galaxy. I like the major guy. He's no nonsense. He even lets her tell like what the ISB's mission statement is, and he's like, word for word, exactly from the manual, totally wrong. Talks about how like the galaxy is full of symptoms and you're supposed to identify these symptoms and cure it the Imperial way, which I thought was again another piece of great writing. This show is awesome so far, and even though we really cut between so many of these storylines in this episode, it all felt very justified. Felt really good to see all these things happen. She's got this rivalry already, this Lieutenant Meero with this Blevin guy who's in charge of Ferrix, and he shows up in the Ferrix scenes to dismiss Cyril and all that. I really love seeing this ISB stuff because it felt very much like the expansion of stuff that we saw in Lost Stars and a lot of stuff in the Legends with these guys who are like the secret police of the Empire, but now they're more like information brokers, spies, above and beyond anything that Empire needs. Really cool to see. Yeah, she apparently was with the steer guard stuff, so she's trying to get the Star Path engine and then take over the Ferric stuff. She seems very ambitious so far. There's something about the actress Denise, I believe her name is. She's got like this something's like burning inside of her to like not just do right by the Empire, but have this ambition and for what purpose instead of just because she wants to. I don't know, but she's already really compelling to me. Um, she's obviously gonna, based on the trailers, get towards Ferrix, but her right now her enemy is Blevin. I liked a little bit of the interconflict with ISB. Overall, I just loved how competent the Empire feels in this Empire. Just in this episode, it's so nice. I mean, these are the best, the smartest, the brightest. But she's also like, I don't know, she's an outcast in a way because she's more from a law enforcement sort of background. And the major is like, that's kind of what we're looking for to take us to the next step instead of these goody two shoes wearing collars. Like, we want people who can think outside the box, who need to do what they can do, but you need to do all these other things that everyone else does. Again, I'm loving this layers to these characters, the support, the antagonism. But this was the meatiest thing. I feel like totally her character and Cyril are going to interact maybe by next episode. That's just a quick prediction I'm going to put out there. But for an episode that had so many storylines, with the Andor storyline perhaps being the weakest, but still massively engaging, and with so many cuts back and forth, it could have easily just been like a drop-off episode, but it's just a pure expansion, and I really enjoyed that. Great stuff. I, what can I say? I'm really excited for where the show's going. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching our review of episode 4 of Andor. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. We're on the march to 1,000 subs, and we really appreciate your guys' engagement. Tell your friends. We really want to share all this cool content that we have on this channel with all Star Wars fans, and we love discussing with you guys. So again, make sure to like and comment as always on our channels and on our videos. Anything you put down there, we'll reply to as soon as possible. And if you're an audio podcast fan, you can find us on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And if you haven't already, follow us on our socials. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You'll find the immediate reaction that I had for this episode on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels as well. So check that out if you want as well. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on Friday for our episode 5 Andor speculation and predictions video. See you then.